Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for that very warm welcome there. My name is Peter Flett, and please call me Peter. As was described, I'm also an alumni of the University of Stirling. I went there many years ago, and I did a BSc in Management Science. And then my wife went to Stirling to do an MBA, and then my son went to Stirling to do a degree in psychology. So you could say that my family are very keen fans of the University of Stirling. I'm just here today to give you have a bit of talk about events management and what's happened after COVID. It is just my views on it, my observations about it, and then I'll talk a little bit about Stirling as well, because obviously it's a Stirling degree you'll be doing if you sign up, and you have the opportunity to come over to Stirling and visit us and do a semester at Stirling as well. So there's a really nice opportunity to work in a great course here and also come over to Stirling to do a semester at Stirling as well and see what we do there. So yeah, there's also going to be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So I have been not just working at Stirling, but I've been a student there as well many years ago. But also I teach every year, apart from COVID, I come to Singapore to teach project management. And yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity, and it's a great partnership we've had with Singapore over the years. Our marketing division, I think, were the ones that started it, and it's now expanded and it's doing really well. I think we've got a slight technical issue here. Here we go. That's it. Let's just look at events. They're central to our culture. There are arguably, over the years and the decades, there's been increases to our spending and our discretionary spending. But we also have public and private events and celebrations and entertainment. And I think what the COVID pandemic brought in was the fact that we really need those as a race, you know, as a species. We actually need these events to actually sort of make life worthwhile. And they are central both to our private life, but also to our public life and our culture as well. The other thing too as well is it's a definite business as well. Organizations and businesses from all sectors, the private, the public, the not-for-profit sector, they're elements of our identity and their culture. They take part in business and marketing strategies. They are revenue generating capability. Scotland, rather like Singapore, has a very thriving tourism industry. And this is something that is centered around events. I was telling my project management students that we celebrate New Year in Scotland probably more than we celebrate Christmas. And all the local authorities in Scotland have relatively recently, probably in the last 20 years, realized that this is something that they can make into a revenue generating event. So the city of Edinburgh is very famous for its New Year celebrations now, and they've become very organized at actually creating a large scale event for thousands of people that makes this really good PR for Edinburgh and for Scotland, but also is a revenue generating capability for the city of Edinburgh. There is obviously risk attached with that because sometimes the weather's not very good, so they've got to cancel things. But it has got to the stage where it's actually become a very slick operation. So this has also been replicated by other cities and towns round about Scotland as well. And we see this with other things as well. Obviously, COVID was a huge impact to everything. Unheard of event that happened to all of us worldwide. However, the events industry is resilient. We have started to see it get back to where it was before. However, there's been a number of businesses that have gone out of business. But as I said already, humans need to interact, we need to attend, we need to participate in events large and small. So events have not disappeared. So it's always been valuable and it always will be valued. But there's been and there needs to be further changes in how events are operated, and we need to actually pivot to meet these challenges as well. And I think it depends on the country, it depends on sometimes governments as well as to how well the pandemic and how well COVID was dealt with. And I think this will be the challenge for the future, is how well some countries will be able to learn from others as to how they dealt with the pandemic. It's interesting, I was in touch with my students in Singapore during the pandemic, and it was quite stark, the differences in how the government in Singapore acted far quicker than the government in the UK to deal with the pandemic and to shut things down, and arguably did far better than the UK government in dealing with the pandemic. So I think that one of the key lessons that we've got to learn as a human race is, how do we learn from this in the future, and how do the countries that didn't cope so well with the pandemic learn from the countries that did? It's interesting, I think we have sort of moved on quite quickly from the pandemic, and I think there's a bit of forgetfulness in what has happened, and hopefully we don't forget, and hopefully we start to learn and reflect back on what happened. One of the key things with managing events is it's managing people, it's managing change, it's managing risk. Now, I come from the project management world. Originally, I used to be an engineer in my past life, but I equate events management with project management. It's exactly the same. Projects have a start, they have a finish. They're there for a finite time. There's always variables in them. There might be some repetition in them, but typically they have differences. There is uncertainty and there is uniqueness and novelty about them. You've also got to manage facilities. You've got to manage now virtual platforms and lots more. Events management equals skills, project management, but the skills and the knowledge are exactly the same. What's the priority? Well, you've got to, if we have this rather simplistic Venn diagram here, we're dealing with change, we're dealing with people, and we're dealing with risk. And what we've got to try and do is target this sweet spot where we can manage all three things. We reduce the risk, we deal with the change, and we also manage the people in a way that actually they can attend a safe event, have a really enjoyable time, and the events business flourishes, and the event sponsor sees this as a worthwhile thing to do, and it generates and it grows from there. Let's look at the different components of that. And this is rather like the lectures that I actually do with the students. So we look at risk, and risk is defined as the possibility of suffering harm or loss or danger. It's a measure of the probability and the severity of adverse effects. And events management has always had to manage risk. Sadly, you can see that bottom picture there, that was an air show where 11 people died because a vintage plane crashed. And risk happens all over. The company that did the film, The Life of Pi, which is a fantastic film to see with amazing special effects, it won the Oscar for special effects, and then it went bankrupt 11 days later. So when we're looking at events management companies, we want to look at sustainability, and that's not just sustainability in terms of the environment, but it's also about sustainability in terms of being a business. So financial and business sustainability as well. You can also look at risk to physical health as well. So Stirling University many years ago was investigating the impact of heading a football by young people and how there was a potential for brain injury. And that has led to changes in legislation where younger children in football are not allowed to head the ball. And interestingly, recently in the UK, we've seen that rugby is now coming under scrutiny for the damage it's causing to people in later life. We can define uncertainty in different ways. So aleatoric risk, this is the uncertainty of a probabilistic setup. So for example, a set of dice, a roulette wheel, typically aleatoric risk is associated with gambling. We know that a dice has got 6 sides on it and it's got 6 numbers. So you know when you throw it, you're going to get one of those 6 numbers. And so we know the risk and we know it. There is randomness, but it's understood and we fully characterize the risk. The question, which often gamblers tend to ignore, is whether the loss rate associated with the risk is actually acceptable. Epistemic risk, this is the known unknowns. So this is a measure of belief in a proposition between falsehood and a certainty of belief. Uncertainty about a known parameter, for example, a known unknown. So it's uncertainty about a failure rate or the potential severity of the risk. So we understand there's a risk, but we're still uncertain about how much there'll be. We did know that there was a risk to life posed by COVID-19, but we were uncertain about the severity of it. And this looks set to continue with future variants. But we can see, as I said at the start, we could see that there was different responses by different countries. And that was maybe because of their past experience. And so the epistemic risk that COVID-19's posed and how leaders and governments have reacted or not reacted, as the case may be, in dealing with the pandemic. So again, I think we've got to learn from this going forward. We've got to say, okay, how do we reflect on what happened and then take these lessons and actually apply them in a way that we can still have events and be confident in the fact that if something happens, we can still cope with it. I pressed the wrong button there. There we go. And then the final risk we can look at is ontological risks. Now, these are the unknown unknowns. Now, that term is quite often associated with a well-known American politician. But these are the unidentified holes and flaws in our understanding. We don't know how many risks there are, and we may be even uncertain about the type of risk or risks we're running. I've called this, maybe it's blissful ignorance. However, organizations that actively look for ontological risks tend to not have accidents. And the irony is that organizations that do not actively look for ontological risks do have accidents. So there's a bit of learning there to take place. And I think maybe as a society, as a species, we need to take that sort of on board, that actually we need to keep on looking for the unknown unknowns and try and identify them and move them from ontological risks to one of the other categories so we can then cope with them as well. So my question at the bottom there would be, does this apply to countries? So what's needed to manage events following COVID-19? Typically, to have a career in the events industry and events management, the same knowledge, tools and techniques and skill sets are exactly the same. However, to allow people to attend, to participate, to enjoy events, and be safe and secure environment, we need to emphasize and get the balance right between managing risk, managing people, maybe changing attitudes, and actually try and get this sweet spot in the middle so we get a balance between things. I think, unfortunately, it again depends sometimes on culture and society, but certainly in the UK, occasionally I get the feeling that these things have been forgotten already. We've got quite a short-term memory, and I hope we don't, because I wouldn't like to go back to what we were before, but I am hopeful that we're going to learn and move on from that as well. I think one of the things, if I make another observation about events after COVID, is we're also dealing with a cost of living crisis in the UK just now. Inflation is very high compared to what it's been. And it's clear that raw materials and other things have increased enormously, which has also had another impact on the events management industry in the UK, plus things like Brexit, as well as COVID. So it's quite difficult at the moment to unpick where the problems have lain. So I think we're actually dealing with multiple things after COVID in the UK. However, it's clear that events are as popular as ever. There's no shortage of events going on. It is interesting, we are seeing probably higher attendances at more local events as well. People are maybe not traveling so far for some of the events, and there is an increase in what's happening in people's doorsteps. So that in itself is quite an interesting thing. In the next year or two, there'll be more research coming out as to what the legacy has been of COVID and how people's behaviours, if they have changed at all. So it's really still too early to tell. There's the opportunities, there's leading the charge in finding ways of establishing the key cultural, sporting and entertainment events. There's key technologies have been accelerated by the pandemic. We can see this in the university sector, the use of hybrid learning, the use of online. My students now at Stirling, I have students face-to-face, but as soon as I go into the lecture, we also log on and there's students online as well because they're not on campus. So as far as that's concerned, our industry has really changed forever. The genie is now out the bottle. And that's the same for other industries like the events industry as well. Technology, the pandemic has accelerated the use of certain technologies. And actually, we can see that this is going to just extend further and further and further. Just prior to the pandemic, I was over in Stockholm at a conference. And at the conference, they had some virtual reality hologram technology shown. And I went into this lecture theatre very skeptical about what this is going to be like. And basically all you could see was a sort of frame that went out on the stage, it almost looked like a set of football posts. And the CEO of the company that had the technology was in Canada. And next thing you saw this hologram of this guy standing on stage, and he was speaking in real time to the audience. And I was just blown away. It was just incredible. And obviously they had their proprietary technology that they were demonstrating, but it basically involved their software and hardware plus some projectors. It wasn't particularly fancy in terms of what you needed. It was very expensive, but their idea was, well, if you have a special guest speaker, say for example Bill Gates or someone famous, you could project him round about the world and he would be able to see the audiences and interact with them in real time. So this CEO who was in Canada, literally he was pointing to people in the audience and asking them questions, or they were asking him questions, and there was no lag at all. You couldn't tell. It was phenomenal. So there is technology that's either out there or just around the corner that is going to be revolutionary. And yeah, I think it's going to, virtual reality, augmented reality is going to become a thing. Most of the phones that we all have, you know, are phenomenally powerful things, and they'll only get more so. But I think VR and augmented reality is just going to become integrated into events as well. So there's quite a lot to look at, especially in the digital sphere. We also got to capitalize on making events more sustainable. And as I said before, that's about financial sustainability as well as environmental sustainability as well. I think environmental sustainability, it's not now seen as a bolt-on, it's just seen as a given. We've got to do it in everything we do, not just events. There is opportunities we've got to create events companies that are resilient as well and flexible and able to cope with any future disruptions. And that, again, goes back to managing risk and maybe having a more pragmatic view of risk as well, and having contingencies for it. So events are back. I've been to a number of concerts. My wife is a real live music fan. And yeah, so we've been to a number of concerts, which have been fantastic. You forget how life-affirming events actually are when you go to them. And it's interesting, some of the early things that were trialled in Scotland during COVID, like, for example, COVID passports and other things have been dropped. But again, a lot of these sort of initiatives are very much based on the culture of the country and what the government actually want to apply and what people find makes them safe. But the regeneration of the events industry is underway. The key question for me is, will we have learned the lessons from the challenges that COVID has presented? And will we be able to deal with another pandemic in a more efficient and less intrusive way? Obviously, time will tell. It's very, I can't see into the future, but hopefully we will learn from this and we will be able to be more resilient in the future. Okay, that's really sort of just my thoughts, and they're very general thoughts about after COVID. It's such a big subject, and the world is such a different place. It's very difficult to be definitive about it, but I think that the learning from what has happened will take 5-10 years to actually be analysed and come out. There's a lot of research being done about it just now, certainly in the UK. If I can now move on to the events management programme that Stirling run. Now, typically, the events management programme is housed in the Stirling Management School, so it is effectively at its core a business and management degree with some specialisms in events management. So we encompass business, we encompass management and event-specific topics, from digital and experiential marketing to projects and events management and venue management. We also look at effective communications and external relations. That's key to events management as well. No lecturer is restricted in how they teach, so you will not find one module taught one particular way. We have different assessments we can use, and the reality is that these assessments can be either coursework, exams, multiple choice quizzes, presentations, journals. We now have video blogs as well. So there's a range of learning and teaching tools. Typically for the modules we're teaching just now, there also has been a move, partly because of COVID, away from exams as well. So we tend to be more coursework driven now. However, some modules still have exams. But we are not restricted as academics as to what we can do. We typically have a choice of what sort of assessment we can set. There is a real emphasis about applying theory to the real world. Obviously, universities are about creating theory and looking at maybe quite esoteric subjects, but Stirling has always emphasised that this is about real world practical issues and providing you with tools and techniques and methodologies to actually use in the real world, especially after you leave Stirling. So for example, in my project management course, we use Microsoft Project software, which when you leave Stirling, you have that in your CV, that is a practical tool that you can take forward into any business, not just an events business, to use for scheduling, networking and resource allocation. So we tend to, whilst we also teach a theory, we also teach practical aspects of life as well, tools and techniques. We've got we've got an award-winning careers service, careers employability service, and that also has an international part to it as well. So the SIM students can access this as well, and they will look for specific jobs for students in Singapore. The thing I emphasize is that students shouldn't just look at the private sector, they should look at the public and the not-for-profit sector as well. Some of the not-for-profit sector jobs are tremendously interesting and satisfying because they do an awful lot of work in the fundraising sphere, and they should not be seen as a sort of poor choice compared to the private sector. I say this mainly because my wife has worked in the not-for-profit sector, the charity sector, for 35 years, and they're very sharp business. And I think as well, if you've got experience in the not-for-profit sector, you actually get snapped up by the private sector quite quickly. But one of the things that's worth remembering about the Career Centre at Stirling is that once you join the university, you can access it for life. So you can keep on going back even after you've left and graduated from Stirling. This is a picture of the loch. We call lakes lochs in Scotland, and there's 2 of them on the campus. We have 330 acres of land. It was once quoted as the most beautiful campus in Europe. It is stunning. I tend to rush into work and almost forget about it, but occasionally you pause and you see the swans and the ducks and the students racing around doing jogging and taking exercise and stuff. But it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. That's the Wallace Monument. It's just at the back of Stirling, and the campus is just beautiful. You need to see it to believe it. Occasionally we've had film crews there who are filming things like Outlander and other stuff. We're right at the base of the hills, the Ochils, which are right behind us, which student and staff, very fit staff, not me, run up. This is an aerial shot, so you can see, I don't know if this has got a pointer on it, this building up here is where most of the teaching is done. This is the student accommodation across the loch. So in theory, don't advise it, but you can fall out your bed at 5 to 9, rush across the bridge and get to your lectures in time for 9 o'clock. We also are the Centre of Excellence for Sport in Scotland, and we've got extensive sporting facilities and virtually every sport under the sun that we can accommodate. There's everything from American football to baseball to football to rugby to cricket to hundreds of other sports as well. But it's a stunning campus, absolutely stunning campus. Scotland itself, we're a fairly small country. I don't know what the population's standing at just now. I think it's about 6 million, but we have quite a big land mass for the size of our country. So most of the population's in what's called the Central Belt. And obviously tourism's a big thing in Scotland. That middle picture there is Stirling Castle. So that's just about a mile away from the university. So it's a very historic castle where William Wallace fought one of his battles. So it's just steeped in history, most of which, unfortunately, I should know more about, but I don't. But it's also a very accessible country as well. Stirling's a relatively small town, but it's quite close to Glasgow and Edinburgh. They're about half an hour, 3/4 an hour away by train. Here's the location here. Obviously, Scotland's in the north of the UK, and you can see, if I can, I don't have a point. I don't think I've got a point on this. Oh, I do, yeah. So there's Stirling just there, and Glasgow and Edinburgh are 2 main cities. Glasgow has about 1 million residents, and I think Edinburgh's got about 3/4 of a million. And we're just slightly, we're in between the two, and we're slightly north of them. When you fly into Stirling, you can fly into Glasgow or Edinburgh from the Middle East, Dubai or Doha, or you can go by London with BA, and it's literally 20 minutes in the flight up to Stirling as well. But very accessible, really good transport links. And if you come to Stirling for a semester, it literally is about an hour to London in the plane, an hour and a half to go to Paris and other places in Europe in a bucket airline for fairly cheap money if you want to explore Europe at the same time. This is Stirling Castle. I was round there with some guests from Hungary, from Budapest Business School the other day, and it's phenomenal. You need to take more than one visit because the history is just incredible. It's on top of a volcanic plug, and it really does have a fantastic view round about. Living in Stirling, it's vibrant, small, very safe city. It's been classed as one of the 2 most affordable cities in the UK. Usually you find that Scotland is, the cost of living tends to be a bit cheaper than England. It is relative, but we're not quite so expensive for living expenses. The city, it's got shopping, cafe culture, performance arts. I'm obviously too old to know anything about the nightlife, but from what I believe, the students tell me it's very good. But yeah, I know nothing about that. It is a warm, friendly community. It's easy to get around. We're about 30 minutes from Glasgow and Edinburgh if you want a bigger city vibe, with good transport links. And yeah, it's just a really nice place to live and work. I've been there a long time, so yeah, I'm maybe a little bit parochial. We have about 14,000 students, just over 10,000 undergraduates, about 4,000 postgraduates, and 1,500 staff. We've got 120 nationalities, and they're all represented in campus. 20% of our cohort come from overseas, so you will not be unique when you come from Singapore to study at Stirling. In fact, the interesting thing is, I'm probably one of the few native Scots people in the department. A lot of my colleagues come from other places, so the lady that's with me on this trip who's teaching marketing is Minnie's from Greece, and that's pretty common. Most of my colleagues are from other countries. So we're very eclectic that way. We've just spent £41 million in our campus. We've created new sports facilities. If you go onto the website, you can do a virtual tour, and yeah, it's a place I need to visit but haven't visited, but I should. And there's a lovely new social spaces as well, just across from where my office is, called Campus Central. So there's, rather like this being a really nice area for seating and things, it's got these couches and study areas, and it's just been transformed. It's absolutely stunning. More pictures. The other thing we have in campus, it's maybe quite unique in Scotland for a university, is a castle. This is a castle that dates back a couple of 100 years. It's used as an administrative block at the moment, but yeah, that's on the way up to some of the halls. We have Student Union, which is run by the students themselves, and it's got a welfare centre, facilities, entertainment, clubs and societies. We also have a doctor and dentist on campus. We have a theatre and cinema on campus as well that everyone can use, including members of the public. And there's also a hotel on campus called the Stirling Court Hotel, which now actually, so if you have family or friends visiting, they can obviously stay there, or they can get preferential rates at some of the other university accommodation. This also, it's now got so popular that it's hosting weddings as well. This picture here, this is of our library. It was updated about 3 or 4 years ago at £13 million. Stunning place to study. It's got group study areas and all the technology you need as well. What our students say about us? Well, the 91% overall satisfaction rate. We're first in the UK and 5th in the world for a campus environment. Top 10 in the UK for clubs and societies. 96% satisfaction rate for lecturer expertise and 94% for English language support. We provide a lot of support services. We realise that sometimes some things don't go well. So we have a lot of support for students when they come to Stirling, but also for students that are here as well. And that's in terms of learning support and pastoral support as well. We've got these various qualifications as well. Not go too deeply into them, but we're a research intensive university that also is very proud about our teaching as well. Here's some of the statistics, and no doubt we can pass on the lecture material to you as well, so you can look through that in more detail. Yes, this was me before the beard, which came in COVID. But if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me. My phone number's there as well. More than happy to meet up with you on Teams. Teams makes it very easy now to have a chat. So please don't be shy. Just email me. We can organize a Teams meeting, can have a chat. Any questions at all, I'm more than happy to answer them. I will still come to Singapore to teach because I love coming here to teach. But there is one of my colleagues, Genoa Joseph, will be taking over from me. But don't worry, there's plenty of crossover, and Genoa's office is literally 2 doors down from me. So I'm not going to be running away from events management anytime soon. So really, that's about all I've got to say. I've probably dribbled on too much, but anyway, I just wondered, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask? In my huge audience. If you don't have ideas just now, don't have questions just now, feel free to contact me later. I'm more than happy to do that. I am teaching here today at SIM, so yeah, you can also put a note in or get me to come out at, usually we have a break about, what, 3 o'clock? So more than happy to speak to people then. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you for the informative discussion and talk, Dr. Peter. Thank you. So next, we would like to invite Mr. Ng, who will be giving us an overview of the Bachelors of Art with Honours, the Events Management Program here at SIM. Mr. Ng, please.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for coming today. I'm Stirling. I'm based in SIM here. I'm from University of Stirling. Yeah, I heard my colleagues Peter shared with you about some of the aspects of events of the program. So I'll touch on more at the admin part, the delivery part of what we do here at SIM for the programs that you'll be interested in. Okay, these are some of the modules that we will be doing for the program itself. Peter teaches on the project management module. Of course, there are other aspects making up of the program. So we do have delivering value in the digital age, sustainable events, experiential marketing, and so on and so forth. So these are just some of the modules that we teach on the programs for the year 1 and year 2 modules. Okay, this is a quote from one of our graduates 2-3 years ago, Singling, and this is what she chose to, why she chose the program. She likes the way that we teach us here, our style of sharing, doing case studies, as well as the doing away of exams. I think Peter has shared with you, we are doing more and more away with exams and doing more and more assignments for the programs that we have in Singapore. Okay, the program is a full-time program. It's for 2 years. 2 semesters per year, and we do 3 modules per semester. So a bit different from what you do with your diplomas. We do the modules in a sequential basis rather than on the parallel basis. So when Peter is here, he will touch on the whole module itself, where after Peter left, a local tutor will take over and go through the materials with you for another 3 weeks and 5 seminar sessions. Then after that, we wrap up the whole module and we go on to module B. And then the same thing happens, and then we go on for module C. So we do 3 modules per semester. And the lectures are for 3 hours each per class, and usually we do 6 hours per day. So when Peter is here, he will do 30 hours of lectures across 5 days, across 2 weeks. So in between, you got a weekend rest, and then we finish off the lectures. Then after that, the local tutors will take over. 5 seminars across 3 weeks. Then after that, we finish up the whole thing, okay? I think Peter has touched on a lot about the semester exchange. So if you join the program, you'll be, how should I say, on a voluntary basis, you can opt to go to a semester exchange in Stirling. Okay, we can enjoy the life over there and see what is happening over there. Okay, which is why Peter shared a lot about Stirling and Scotland itself. Okay, the programs are fully taught by, from faculty from the university, where Peter, like for example, Peter fly in to teach on the module. So every module we will fly in our lecturers from UK, Stirling to teach, and then the local tutor will take over. Okay, assessment-wise, a combination of coursework, exams, slowly doing away with it. I think for the events course, you only have 1 or 2 exams at most. Yeah. And then if you are unable to attend the lectures, we do have an online learning platform for you to access all the materials. You know, where you can access the recorded videos, the materials to help you with the revision and catch up with what you have missed out. Okay, these are the admission requirements. Essentially, you need a diploma for this events program. Okay, you need a diploma from one of the 5 local polytechnics or from SIM, MDIS. Okay, and then you need to achieve a minimum C6 in English for passes or IELTS or TOEFL. Based on the requirements here. Okay, but as long as your diploma is conducted in English medium from one of the 5 local polytechnics, you will need to meet the English requirements. This is more for the international students. Okay, if your diploma is not events related ones, you will need to do what we call a prep course. Okay, essentially you need to do 1 or 2 modules to help you catch up with students who have been doing events for their diplomas. Okay, so either you do one in marketing and one in events management, depending on what modules you have done in your diploma days. And for the prep course, the lectures and tutorials are all conducted by local lecturers. And it's delivered via a blended learning platform. Meaning to say 50% of the time you attend the lessons here, another 50% online. Okay. Upon successful completion of the prep course, then you can join the program, which begins in August or late August. Okay. If let's say, for example, after completing the prep course, you decided to take a year break. Okay. The prep course is valid for 2 years. That means after 1 year later, you can still come back with the prep course without the need to do the prep modules again. Okay. The price for the prep course is $700 per module, and then if you need to do 2 modules, that will be about $1,004, so $700 each. So if you have done marketing, for example, in your diploma days, then you don't need to do it again. So what you need to do is just to do the introduction to events management. But of course, if your GPA is not there, I will still make you do the prep course to help you build a foundation before you join the main program. Okay. Okay, the total cost fee for this is about $40,000 for Singapore students and about $43,000 for international students. Okay, the important dates you need to take note. If you need to do a prep course, you need to apply to us by 3rd of April, and the prep course commencement date will be on 22nd of May. For direct entry students, if you have done an events management program diploma in the poly days, then you'll be considered for direct entry, and you need to apply to us by 5th of May, where the main program will commence on the 21st of August.